Hello everybody. My name is Kim Grubbs and I would like to talk to you about preventive health. It's a very popular topic, but I have some very unique experiences that inform my perspective on preventive health. I've spent my career as a paramedic. That was in my earlier days, as evidenced by this picture, and my youngest son, who's now in his 20s. I've also spent a significant amount of time as an emergency department nurse, but the majority of my career has been spent as a teacher. I've taught emergency medical sciences at a community college in northeast Kansas, and as an educator experienced in emergency medicine, I have a unique perspective on the value and importance of preventive health. And this first video is going to be a brief introduction to the science that undergirds preventive health, and then we will go on in future videos to delve into particular aspects much more deeply. Now, as I said, preventive health is all the rage these days. It's amazingly popular and ironically also amazingly rare. And by that I mean there aren't that many people that actually take the message to heart, that's because that's for a variety of reasons. I mean, it's difficult. The preventive lifestyle in our culture is very, very challenging, not only because there's so much kind of junk science and economic opportunism. I mean, every paper you open, every magazine you open, every web page you open is filled with all kinds of advertisements and marketing information about this food supplement, that exercise, so on and so forth. And so it's confusing at best, and as I said, is challenging to make the kind of decisions that lead to a healthy lifestyle in the environment in which we find ourselves in modern day United States of America. We also, I think, suffer a bit from these two euphemisms: if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and out of sight, out of mind. And the reason for this is that many of the things that go on inside of our bodies over decades really aren't symptomatic or don't begin to actually bother us consciously until one day we have a heart attack or a stroke, or we go into diabetic ketoacidosis, or have some other kind of medical crisis that calls our attention to these things. I mean, it's sort of like doing preventive maintenance on your car. I mean, you can drive your car for years and it probably won't break down, but if you do good preventive maintenance, it's going to last 3-4 times as long, and it's not going to leave you beside the roadside stranded, if you've taken good care of it. So, the adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, doesn't apply so very well to preventive medicine or preventive health, and certainly out of sight, maybe out of mind, but it doesn't mean that there's not significant damage going on inside of our bodies. And these terms, asymptomatic and subclinical, are kind of medical terms, and I'll use quite a few medical terms, and I'll try to always define them and explain what they mean, but I think they're very apt terms in this application, in that these disease processes, which I'm going to help you gain insight into, because I think one of the big problems is most Americans, and most people for that matter, wherever we find them in the world, don't understand the very direct and significant connections between their day-to-day choices and behaviors and the silent and very damaging disease processes that are going on in our bodies from, unfortunately, quite a young age. And by that, then we mean this term asymptomatic. In other words, there's clinical pathology going on, primarily at the cellular and at the vascular, the microvascular level. And these are subclinical processes. In other words, they have no symptoms like chest pain or other difficult difficulty breathing that generally we would say, whoa, I better go see the doctor. That's not happening for many, many years. And unfortunately, when those symptoms do appear, unlike your car, which, can be taken apart and fixed, even if it needs, a new engine or a ring job or a valve job, unfortunately, because of the type of damage that's happening inside our bodies during these subclinical and asymptomatic decades, this is largely irreversible. I mean, there's much that we understand in modern medicine about how to help healing and how to fix things that are broken in the body, but these processes that go on at the microvascular and cellular level really can't be fixed once, the organ systems begin to break down. So it's puzzling, I think, to most people. I mean, in many ways, perhaps, ignorance is bliss in this regard, but not really. I mean, it's good to go along and not be bothered by these things, but when they do become bothersome, it's usually catastrophic. And so, I'm going to attempt to answer 4 questions. What's killing us? What are some major health trends in the United States of America? I mean, this is like fitting the pieces of a puzzle together, and I think most lay people and even a lot of medical people struggle with that. And then most importantly, how are these things related to each other? How are they connected? I mean, that's so important for everybody to understand. And then finally, what can I do to make better choices, to take better care of myself, to live a preventive lifestyle? Now, this is a good place to start. This is epidemiologic data from the CDC, and this is actually from 2007, which there's a lag time of 3 or 4 years between the availability of these national statistics like this. These are the 7 leading causes of death in the United States. So 7 leading causes of death, in the United States in 2007 in order of incidence. And so we've got heart disease and cancer, which probably doesn't surprise anybody. I mean, if you've ever read much at all or listened to the news, you probably know that. Strokes, again, not too surprising. Chronic lower respiratory diseases, a little medical ease there, but that's referring to such things as pneumonia, COPD, emphysema, and asthma, which are all common illnesses. Accidents, unintentional injuries, 5th leading cause of death, and then 6th, Alzheimer's, and 7th, diabetes. Now, a couple of very, very important, significant things about this list. First, these last 2 weren't there in the previous year. Now, this is a list that's pretty static over the decades. I mean, heart disease has been the leading cause of death in America for decades. So when new etiologies or new trends show up in these leading causes of death, this is very significant and alarming. And so these last 2, 6 and 7, Alzheimer's disease and diabetes, are rapidly increasing in their incidence or frequency in the United States of America. And this is something that is significant in a preventive perspective and also is just significant to us in our country. Economically, it's significant. Medically, it's significant. Now, the other thing about this list is that this really is not a list of 7 things. It's really a list of about 4 things, and let me tell you why. Here's why. Heart disease, stroke, all the ones in blue, Alzheimer's, and diabetes are quite closely related to each other in terms of the pathology, pathology, P-A-T-H-O-L-O-G-Y. Now, pathology refers to the ways in which a disease process affects and exerts its influence in the cells and tissues and organ systems in the body. And all 4 of these illnesses or diseases and the processes, the pathology of them, are similar in that they affect or are affected by the microvasculature, the capillaries, the blood flow to various different organs and organ systems of the body. And so in that regard, they have strong risk factor relationships with each other. And that's why I say, this list, rather than really being 7 different distinct things, while they are different and distinct, there's a strong common thread knitting the first, third, sixth, and seventh one together, which obviously means the leading causes of death lumped together are very, very strongly related to vascular pathology. Now, the last thing before I go on, real quickly, you've probably noticed the title here. And this is very, very significant economically to us. In the United States, we are currently spending about 18% of the gross domestic product of our country on health care. And this is projected to rise to 50% over the next 50 years, which of course is unsustainable and untenable. And but even at 18%, or to round it off to 20%, if you consider your own family budget, you cannot afford to spend 20% of your income on health care. And so if 80% of illness is preventable, and we spend 90% of health care dollars, 90% of this 18% of the gross domestic product, to pay for these illnesses that are preventable, then the science of prevention, the commitment to preventive health takes on a whole new meaning and significance, right? Now, here's just another way of looking at this. These are preventable causes of death, looking at it from a behavioral perspective. So you notice that along the bottom here are not actual disease or illness entities, but behaviors like tobacco smoking, overweight and obesity, alcohol, infectious diseases, toxins, motor vehicle accidents, firearm deaths, sexually transmitted diseases, and drug abuse. And these are the top 10 or so causes of death from a behavioral standpoint. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on tobacco smoking. Tobacco cessation and smoking cessation has been in the news for decades, and there's lots and lots of knowledge and information about that. But I am going to focus a great deal on the obesity epidemic. Now, just out of a desire to be very honest with you, and that you know that I'm not just talking about things I've learned as a researcher and teacher and a clinician, but so this is not just theoretical for me. This is my family. Here I am sitting right there, and as you can see, just looking at my family, you probably see right off some health behavioral issues here, which primarily have to do with weight and obesity. And let me just quickly, not to in any way be disrespectful to my family, because I love them dearly, but to kind of let you know the path I've walked, and also how these major national trends play into our everyday lives. And so I'm one of 5 kids. This is my mom. My mom had extensive cardiovascular disease. She died a little over a year ago from Alzheimer's disease and congestive heart failure. She had multiple heart attacks, bypass surgery, stent placement, lots and lots of medical problems, and Alzheimer's disease, which really made the last 5 years or so of her life very, very difficult. And then I'm the oldest here, and this is my next youngest sister, who is obese, as you can see, has had type 2 diabetes, and renal problems, okay, kidney failure. Now, one of the places I'm headed to with all of this is to help us understand how all these disease processes relate to each other. How are they interconnected? And so as I list these, with my own family, it's important to be thinking about what are the common threads here that knit these together. So she's had lots and lots of health problems. My next youngest brother is a paraplegic from a car accident in which he was not wearing a seat belt. So there's a bit of the whole trauma thing with which as a paramedic and emergency department nurse I'm all too familiar with. And as you can see, my brother is obese. He has had a couple of stent placements. He also has type 2 diabetes and hypertension. Okay, next my younger sister, who is overweight and has had so far escaped the cardiovascular and diabetic diseases, but has had lots and lots of musculoskeletal problems, which are definitely related to weight and obesity. And then my youngest brother, who's been pretty fortunate so far, as have I, to have led a fairly healthy lifestyle, lots of exercise. His wife is a nutritionist, and so she sort of holds sway, at least when he's at home, a bit over what he doesn't eat. But anyway, so this is not something that is just theoretical for me. And so I want us to think for a minute about this little concept map, because this really delves to the crux of the relationship between what have been called the twin epidemics of our day of diabetes and obesity. I mean, you hear a lot about this, but what you don't hear so much about, and what I hope to help you understand in a scientific and medically relevant way, is how these two epidemics are not just simply disease entities unto themselves. While they are related to over a dozen other common medical conditions. And we must understand that when we are diabetic, when we are overweight and obese, not only are these two illnesses directly related to each other, but in turn they relate directly to coronary artery disease, which is the leading cause of death in our country, to the metabolic syndrome, which you've probably heard of, a combination of hypertension, obesity, and prediabetes. Alzheimer's dementia, which afflicts many older people and is increasing in incidence. Cerebral vascular accident, the #1 leading cause of disability in the United States of America. Hypertension, which is the #1 prevalent adult disease in the United States of America. Arteriosclerosis, which affects the inner lining of the blood vessels and has connections really to all of these other vascular diseases. Okay, for men, erectile dysfunction is a vascular disease in which the microvasculature of the genitalia become corroded and unable to work properly. Diabetes is the #1 cause of adult blindness. Gout is related to diabetes and obesity. Cancers, there are a number of cancers which I've listed here, which are directly related to, the risk of them is related to the prevalence and incidence of diabetes and obesity. Peripheral vascular disease, okay, which you hear ads about on TV quite often, including amputations, infections, and decreased activity. And finally, renal disease or kidney disease. The vasculature of the kidney is incredibly fine, and the microscopic changes that happen in diabetes and obesity often lead to kidney disease and renal failure. So I hope you find this maybe a bit surprising, but it is my goal that you understand these connections in a new way as you learn more about the science that undergirds preventive health. In medicine, we call it evidence-based medicine. Okay, evidence-based medicine. Everything I'm going to talk to you about is from the researched and refereed medical literature. No economic opportunism or junk science here. There's tons of good, high quality, valid research going on in this area today because it's so doggone important to us if we're going to reverse these epidemics and come to see their direct bearing and relationship on this host of other illnesses and diseases which are costing Americans today their lives, their livelihood, and their fortunes. So just kind of wrapping it up on a bit of a humorous note here, we want to make sure that we understand this and we're not confused about it. I mean, my goal here is to unravel this puzzle, as I said at the beginning, and just think this is cute. Dear God, my prayer for 2012 is for a fat bank account and a thin body. Please don't mix these up like you did last year. Amen. And so, there's much here to be confused about potentially, but I think with clarity comes understanding and comprehension, and that's sort of the beginning point to develop a platform to address these things in our own lives and in the lives of, if you're a clinician, the patients that you take care of, family members that you care for and love.